This is a part of all of us that we'll never forget. It'll always haunt us.
Bobby Joe Stinnett was butchered in this house.
Her and Zeb's bedroom was here in the front, and then the next room was where the murder took place. I can't imagine.
Choked with a rope.
She was strangled more than once.
The baby was cut from her stomach, and Bobby Joe slowly bled out.
It left me angry that somebody would come in and do this to another human.
The house where Bobby Joe lived is destroyed. In many ways, so is Skidmore. And almost everyone connected to this case.
I've seen the other side of her. She's a monster. Yeah, there's no redeeming quality there.
Lisa Montgomery's lawyers argue she's mentally ill, has brain trauma, and has suffered sexual abuse and torture all of her life. Her life should be spared. What are your thoughts on that?
It needs to proceed. She meticulously planned this for days, if not months. It affected all the investigators that were involved.
Sheriff Rodney Strong was an investigator with the Major Case Squad back in 2004.
We were angry.
He tracked leads to Melbourne, Kansas, and says he found the most hideous sham.
She stood up and she fake walked like a woman that had just given birth, like it was painful for her.
Turns out Lisa Montgomery was never pregnant. She was a killer who fed those around her a pack of lies. Investigators and even her husband. There was no birth. It was murder and kidnapping.
Lisa stepped in behind her with a garrote, wrapped it around her hands, and reached down and went over her head with it and strangled her.
Sheriff Strong unpacked brutal details for those feeling sorry for the killer. Montgomery researched how to perform a C-section. She made a dry run to Skidmore the day before the murder. Montgomery brought umbilical cord clamps, a rope, and a knife to the Skidmore house. He believes Montgomery knew right from wrong the day she was caught, and points out Bobby Joe fought for her life.
She was grabbing the knife. She had Lisa Montgomery's hair in her hands.
Sheriff Strong is haunted by Bobby Joe's feet. Blood was on the soles. The medical examiner explained Bobby Joe was alive when the baby was cut from her stomach. She moved her legs and feet.
I have no sympathy for Lisa Montgomery for what she did. That was the most monstrous act I can think of.
Lisa Montgomery is scheduled to be executed January 12th. Our investigation into this brutal murder continues Wednesday night.
I am heartbroken over this. I'm telling you all, I'm heartbroken.
Meet Diane Mattingly. She's Lisa Montgomery's sister. Montgomery is convicted of strangling a young mother and then cutting her baby from her stomach, then pretending it was her own. She's scheduled to die by federal execution, the first woman in 67 years.
She should have never been put on death row.
Diane and other advocates say Lisa Montgomery was brutally tortured throughout her life, beaten, raped, and neglected.
Lisa was broken. She was completely broken from all of it. So when I look at everything that they say about her, you can see it step by step where they broke her down.
Diane swears it's true. She survived it before being removed from the home at 8 years old.
Do you believe there was sexual abuse?
I was raped in that home. So yes.
Court exhibits now feature Lisa's childhood moments, marking her passage of times. This is the age she first remembers being sexually assaulted. It was in a cornfield. She'd grow up being beaten and raped by her stepfather and his friends, according to court documents, then trafficked by her own mother. Lawyers and doctors argue her life was fractured any way you view it. She lived in 61 homes in 34 years. What happens to that child?
She went beyond punishment.
Diane says you can't imagine what happened as punishment. The brutal cold showers, being stripped.
She would strip me down naked, say I can't take nothing with me, and push me outside. It felt like forever. You couldn't trust that this was my home.
Diane says she bears the scars. She can't be in small rooms with men. She can't eat onions. They trigger her to this day because that was a punishment that delighted her stepmonster.
She got pleasure making me eat raw onions.
Diane says she's heartbroken for what happened to Bobby Jo Stinnett and her baby daughter.
My heart goes out to the family that lost their daughter, that lost their mother, that lost their wife.
She understands Lisa should never be free, but she also can't understand the justice in her sister's death. KCTV 5 reviewed numerous doctors' notes and legal exhibits as part of our investigation. Here's what those reveal. Montgomery has been diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and psychosis. Doctors suspect traumatic brain injuries from car crashes and rapes. Testimony in old court documents back up claims of rape, torture, and neglect for almost all of her life. In some ways, prison has been a blessing. Montgomery is no longer abused and has mental health treatment and medication.
I'm wanting President Trump to understand that she is broken. She's mental illness. She has been sexually abused her whole life. Please commute this to life. That's what I'm asking as a sister. I'm begging you as a sister to commute it to life.
Lisa Montgomery's lawyers are working on a clemency petition. She's scheduled to be executed January 12th. We will keep you posted on her case. Angie Raccono, KCTV 5 News.
Well, Carolina, I'm right outside the federal prison, and this is where Lisa Montgomery is scheduled to be executed Tuesday night by lethal injection. In the next 48 hours, we're anticipating quite a legal fight and a lot of nationwide attention on this case.
Good morning to you. It is 5 o'clock on this Friday, December 17th. A shocking story out of Skidmore, Missouri, where a young expectant mother is dead.
Sometime yesterday, investigators say someone murdered that mother.
In 2004, Bobby Jo Stinnett was strangled inside her Skidmore, Missouri home. Her unborn baby was cut from her stomach.
An infant girl was brought to Stormont Vale Hospital in Topeka.
The baby girl was later found almost 3 hours away in Melbourne, Kansas.
The talk on this night centered on the house just south of town, Lisa Montgomery's house.
Lisa Montgomery admits she did it. She went on trial and was convicted for murder and kidnapping. Montgomery has grabbed nationwide attention because she'll be the first woman to be executed at the federal level in almost 70 years. It's interesting to note the last female federal execution stemmed from a Kansas City crime. A 6-year-old was kidnapped from his school and murdered. Bonnie Heedy died in the gas chamber.
She just was slowly broken down to where she fell apart.
Montgomery supporters argue it's cruel and unjust to kill her due to her history. Montgomery has been diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality, and psychosis. Doctors suspect traumatic brain injuries from car crashes and rapes. Testimony in old court documents back up claims of rape, torture, and neglect for almost all of her life. There are online petitions and even a song about how cruel her execution will be.
But when they tie me to the chair, will you think it's fair? Will you think it's fair then? And in the morning when it's done, will you think you've won?
What doesn't grab as much attention is the pain the Stinnett family and the community of Skidmore has endured.
This is one of those cases that haunts the investigators because we rarely see something this terrible.
They remember how awful this was. A mother murdered and a baby grew up without ever getting to know her.
Nothing about this day was typical.
It's just been really hard on everybody, and I guess everybody feels there's a better place, and Bobby is there now. So we just feel for her family and her little girl.
That baby recently celebrated her 16th birthday, which is the anniversary of her mother's brutal death.
In the last 48 hours, Montgomery's legal team is arguing that this execution is now unconstitutional because she has lost touch with reality. So we're waiting to see if the courts do step in. There's going to be a lot of legal action, and we will keep you posted from Terre Haute. Back to you in the studio.
Why? What's the motive? Well,
And so what have
One
you
thing.
learned? I like that question. What is the motive? What have you learned when you go back and you look at these cases?
In every one of the cases, him.
Most abductors are in a rocky relationship where they feel a baby could save it, but they are having fertility problems. They are overweight, so it's easy to trick people into believing they are pregnant. Their background reveals a history of deceit and narcissism. They know how to pull off this con because most already have a child.
The vast majority of these women have already had one or more babies of their own. This is not a childless female, which is what, in my mind, we thought early on, oh, this will be a childless female who's desperate to have her own baby and da-da-da-da. No, not the case.
Infant abductions are rare, only about 1 per year. It used to happen more often, about 20 per year. That was 30 to 40 years ago when newborns were being kidnapped from hospitals. John's research and guidance help harden that target.
These women never say, I am a nurse in the hospital. They just act the part.
Maternity units are pretty much locked down now. There are so many layers of security.
We all push babies if you're going to be in the hallway, not arm carry them. And these perpetrators, for whatever reason, will not use a bassinet.
Here's John explaining the psychology of these baby nappers physically picking up that infant.
It's also almost like an instant birth for that perpetrator. But if we could have an instant polygraph, the moment she lifts, boy, I think it would be a flat line on, is this your baby? Yes. And the needle would just say, yeah, she believes it.
Interviews with these women revealed they had actually visited the hospital numerous times and stalked all the hospitals in their area. It's something we know happened in the Lisa Montgomery case. She made a dry run to Skidmore the day before she murdered Bobby Joe Stinnett and stole the baby.
Do you think it's possible Lisa Montgomery had other targets, but maybe they didn't work out?
I don't know that for a fact, but when I look at all of these cases, I'd almost bet on it.
Wow.
Montgomery fits the profile in other ways. She certainly had a fertility problem. She had a sterilization procedure done a decade earlier. She previously had children. Her planning was meticulous. Investigators say she researched how to perform a C-section and even bought clamps and a home birthing kit. All of the fetal abductors have little regard for the real mothers, but they never intentionally hurt the infants.
The baby doesn't even have a scratch. What are the odds, I'm thinking, of doing a section on a woman, and it was like it was done by an expert? Wow.
Fetal abductions are so incredibly rare. There appears to have been 25 of them in the last 40 years. As you can see from this map, most take place in the United States, but there have been fetal abductions in Brazil, Colombia, and South Africa. All of the abductors were caught. Some of the babies died, and almost all of the real mothers bled to death. The violent pretenders were all locked up. Only Lisa Montgomery has been sentenced to death. John and other researchers have interviewed convicted abductors, much like how the FBI interviews serial killers, to learn more.
She's a real-time thinker, not a down-the-road planner.
The women share similarities, but there are hundreds of thousands of women struggling in relationships and with fertility issues who don't murder, kidnap, and destroy lives.
Why do you think that is?
That was the disappointing part of the study that Dr. Burgess did for us, that I really thought there'd be something that would pop out, that, some huge screw that was loose, where you could put a label on it and say, whoa, we need to really watch out, or here's the way to treat that, or this, that, and that. We didn't get any of that out of it.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon for KCTV 5 News at 4. I'm Carolyn Long. We are following a developing story this afternoon. Lisa Montgomery's execution was set for 5 o'clock tonight, just 1 hour from now. But late last night, she was granted a temporary stay. The Department of Justice is fighting that. The prison is moving forward as if, though, this execution will happen. So our investigative reporter, Angie Riccono, is there at the prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, monitoring these events as they unfold. Angie, what is happening? It was on, then off, and now what, on again?
Carolyn, and then off again. I mean, it is going back and forth so quickly. I think calling it a legal roller coaster is very accurate. Bottom line for everyone at home, this is going to go to the Supreme Court. And the last half hour, we learned the execution, the stay was lifted. I'm going to repeat that the stay was lifted, but then another court came in and issued a stay. So we're really in a holding pattern. In 30 minutes, we are going inside for a media briefing, and they've been telling us all day that the prison is moving forward because this is what happens in a lot of cases. It does come down to the wire, and they're waiting for those final court documents and those final court decisions. So this is what we can tell you. Lisa Montgomery is here, and according to the Associated Press, she is inside the cell that is right next to the execution chamber. The execution time was originally set for 5 o'clock. That time is now going to move. Now, here's what has led up to this moment. A district judge has issued a stay last night saying that Montgomery needed a competency hearing, and that's because her attorneys were saying she had lost touch with reality. That has been reversed, but other orders are coming down. Now, earlier today, I spoke with the Nottoway County Sheriff. He is very outspoken on this, and he believes this execution should move forward. He talked to me about how exhausting this has been for everyone in that community, including the Stinnett family, because this execution has been set, it has been delayed, it has been canceled, and then in the last 24 hours, we're seeing rapid fire turnover of whether or not this execution will take place. So what we are going to do now is go inside for that media briefing, and we'll be bringing you live reports from inside the prison. Reporting live in Terre Haute, Angie Riccono, KCTV 5 News.
Now, Angie, you mentioned the Stinnett family. Do you know if they are there with you in Indiana?
No, they do not give out the witness list, and they have been very private, which we respect. They have the right to be here, but it's unclear if they are exercising that right.
Yeah, absolutely. They're right either way, for sure. Angie, I'm sure we'll be in touch here within this hour.
That execution was originally supposed to happen at 5 o'clock, but Montgomery's fate is still being decided by the courts. KCTV 5 investigative reporter Angie Riccono joins us live outside the federal prison in Terre Haute with the latest tonight. So, Angie, where do things stand right now as of 10 o'clock tonight?
There are some small issues that are before the court. The Supreme Court ruled on the major issue of having that competency hearing, and they ruled that didn't have to happen. But now there is a supplemental petition before the court, so they still need to rule on that. As you said, 5 o'clock is when this execution was originally supposed to take place. It is now 10 o'clock. The other executions, a lot of them ran late, but they didn't run this late. Something else that we're keeping an eye on besides the court, just what's taking place here at the media briefing in the prison grounds. Over here are the vans that they will load up for the media witnesses. They haven't been turned on. They haven't been loaded. Nothing is taking place right now. We're about a quarter of a mile from where Lisa Montgomery is actually being housed right now. We're told that she is in a holding cell that is next to that execution chamber. So this is going to be a very late night. We're here. We're monitoring it. We'll let you know if anything develops in this next half hour. And we're also giving you all of this information on all of our social media platforms and our website to let you know what happens, because we do know how important this case is for us, especially locally. We'll continue to bring you live reports. Reporting in Terre Haute, Angie Racono, KCTV 5 News.
Thanks, Angie.
No matter what you believe about the death penalty and this case, you can probably agree that this is sad and this is gut-wrenching. Bobby Joe Stinnett's family waited 16 years for this execution, and the legal back and forth was gut-wrenching for both sides. In the end, Lisa Montgomery died for her crimes. She was convicted of murdering and kidnapping. It happened in Skidmore, Missouri back in 2004. Montgomery strangled Bobby Joe Stinnett and cut out her unborn baby, then pretended it was hers. Her supporters say this execution wasn't justice. This was killing a mentally ill and brain-damaged woman who had been horribly abused her entire life. KCTV 5 made the choice to be here and cover this, recognizing the significance of this case and execution. After the execution was done, we connected with witnesses.
She had a mask on while she was already strapped to the gurney, and they asked her if she had any final last words before they took that mask off of her. So to me, it looked like she maybe tried to respond. So they took the mask off, and then they asked her again if she had any final statements, and she just said no, and she didn't say anything else.
The family of Bobby Joe Stinnett did not offer comment, but they were present at the execution. The attorney for Lisa Montgomery offered this comment moments before the execution. Everyone who participated in the execution of Lisa Montgomery should feel ashamed. Reporting in Terre Haute, Angie Racono, KCTV 5 News.
Montgomery was 52 years old, died by lethal injection. KCTV 5 was the only local news station to directly bring you reports from Terre Haute. Our investigative reporter Angie Racono joins us live now from the prison. Angie, did Lisa Montgomery have any final words to say?
Not really. I'm going to let this truck go by. Carolyn, she really didn't have any final words. She was masked, and witnesses say that, she was asked, do you have any final words? And she mumbled something. And sometimes it's hard to hear people speaking when they have a mask on. So they took her mask off and asked her a second time, do you have anything you want to say? And she said no, and she turned her head to the side. So that was Lisa Montgomery's reaction. As you said, there's a lot of talk about her execution, and today it is nationwide news. The legal team is blasting Trump, but of course her execution is being overshadowed by all of the political turmoil across the nation. Montgomery's legal team released this statement saying that Trump knew about Montgomery's past, quote, but the president did nothing. He had not even the decency to formally deny or even acknowledge Lisa's clemency application, though it is hard to imagine a case more deserving of executive intervention than this one. Lisa Montgomery's execution was far from justice. Montgomery lived a life of sexual abuse and torture, which led to numerous mental illnesses, according to her supporters. She was convicted of murdering Bobby Joe Stinnett and kidnapping her unborn baby. Little Victoria Joe survived, and today she is 16. We were told the Stinnett family did not wish to comment on this morning's execution, but people in Skidmore and Nottoway County were glad to see this execution finally proceed. They were disgusted by all of the delays, legal filings, and the social media pressure to save Lisa Montgomery. People who knew the Stinnetts would post messages with the hashtag Justice for Bobby Joe. We will be bringing you more reports in our later newscast regarding this execution. Reporting live in Terre Haute, Angie Racono, KCTV 5 News.
Angie, thank you.